So far, I want to just thank you very much to our volunteer and professional choir and to Robert for making our services so meaningful. Rabbis only, read English. It's not really hard. The words are beautiful tonight, and we are off to an amazing and meaningful start to our 57-78 calendar year, and I'm so very grateful to everyone. And I wanted to tell you it's been a big year for our congregation as we get inch closer and closer to our 100th birthday. In 2020, Congregation Beth Israel will be 100 years old, which is not bad. And I was thinking about rites of passage, that rite of passage in particular, because I got to experience the rite of passage a few weeks ago of taking. Do you guys remember the 5-year-old boy? His name was Kahn, running around. I think a couple of you may have referred to him as a Vilde Chaya. He's in college now. I got to take him to college. And so we drove up to Flagstaff for this rite of passage to NAU. And I don't really want to hear it from the U of A people or ASU people. I'm not from this state, and I don't care about your rivalries at all. But this rite of passage is an exercise in absolute futility. This I have learned as I took my first child to college. You have to act like you know what you're doing, just like when they're born. I learned that. From this rite of passage, I learned how to feel strong and confident and wise and capable and give comfort while feeling nauseous at the same time. I learned about what it means to be excited for someone but have absolutely no excitement about this at all yourself. The anticipatory anxiety of the summer was unbearable for me, but I learned for Ethan how to act as if I was ready, but I wasn't. It's a big deal, the unknown. And because I've been through so many life cycles with all of you, I thought I would share that he's up there in Flagstaff. It reminded me because a few weeks before Ethan went to college, we read in the Torah portion in Shalach Lecha the story of the 12 spies. And if you remember, 10 of the spies come back after scouting the land of Israel, scared and afraid and filled with fear. They think there's no way it's going to work. They say to Moses and to the Israelites upon returning, 10 of the 12 spies, it's sort of like dropping a kid off to college, but they say, we're not able to go up against the people who are in Canaan. They're stronger than we are. The land through which they have gone as spies in the land, it devours its inhabitants. And all the people who we saw were men of great stature. They get scared. They say, we were like grasshoppers to these giants living in the land of Israel in their eyes. But 2 of the spies, if you remember, Caleb and Joshua, come back and say what it is that I pretended to say to Ethan, which is, we got this. We have faith. God is going to help us, protect us, guide us, give us comfort and safety as we enter the land of Israel. And so 2 spies, Joshua and Caleb, get to ultimately enter the land of Israel, but the other 10 spies do not. They're punished by God. They don't get to see the promised land because of their negativity and their fear-mongering and their angst and their inability to live with fear and instead to choose to live in fear. To live with fear is one thing. To live in fear is another. And God, because of that, does not allow them to enter the land of Israel, as if to say, those who live their lives in fear and in anxiety and don't do anything about it, do not ultimately get to see the promise of entering the land of Israel. And so there's a question for all of us at the beginning of Rosh Hashanah in this, and that is, there are several questions actually, about fear as we enter this time of year, as we enter these days of awe. Why are we always so afraid of the unknown? Why do we always get scared of the things that we don't know about first? Why do we project our feelings of inadequacy and hopelessness and our fears onto other people around us, like the 10 spies did? Why don't we just have faith that things are going to be okay? That we weren't the first, that we won't be the last to have an experience, to face adversity, to be afraid, and to take a risk. This is part of what's happening, I think, in our culture and in our country now, is this fear that we feel, hopelessness, despair, that we share in emails and Facebook postings constantly as if to say to other people, let's all just bail. It's not safe out there. Those people aren't safe. These people are not worthy of being heard from. If you listen to them, you'll go into despair. Why are we always thinking with audacity that we are the first ones ever in the history of the world to live in scary times? Why do we do that to ourselves? It's chutzpah. It happened before, and it will happen again. And as we enter the 10 days of awe, why do we have the audacity to think that we're not capable of real, meaningful change that this time, that this year, may work, may help, may push us to do better? Some of you may have read the writing of the Stanford University psychologist Carol Dweck and read her book called Mindset. And if you remember her book about mindset, and there are all these experiments that she did with children and puzzles, and the kids who stopped when they got stuck versus the kids who went on when they got stuck, when they hit a problem, when they got scared or frightened or anxious by something. And she wanted to understand why certain kids stopped when they were challenged, didn't move on, basically why they were like the 10 spies. And she wanted to know why the other kids went on and actually took this challenge, this fearful time, this anxiety, as a place to move on and break through and get through to the other side. And she called this mindset, fixed mindset and growth mindset. Growth mindset is what we need in our world today. We, as ourselves, as individuals, need a growth mindset, and the ability to see challenges and scary times and anxieties and to do something about it ourselves, to break through in relation to others, to have that conversation that we have been afraid to have with ourselves first and foremost, and with those around us. You see, those with a fixed mindset, those like the spies, the 10 spies, they avoid difficult challenges because they fear failure first, middle, and last. And they think that failure, they live in fear, like the spies, they think it's going to expose them as inadequate. But people with growth mindsets like Caleb and Joshua, like a kid going to college, they don't just seek challenge, they thrive on challenge. They don't fearmonger, they hope-monger. The bigger the challenge, the bigger the fear, the more that they stretch themselves. When do people with fixed mindsets thrive? Carol Dweck says, when things are safely within their grasp, if things get too challenging, they lose interest. But the fixed mindset people, they live with constant hope, constant effort. They learn that people who take risks, who engage adversity, that people with growth mindsets will not fear failure. They'll live with failure, but not in failure. They'll live with fear, but not in fear. They know that if they fail, that they're just going to try again until they succeed. It cannot be confidence that two people among the spies, a coincidence, that the two among the spies who had the growth mindset were also the two who were unafraid of the risks and the trials of entering the land. I think we need to have a growth mindset. Examples of people around us who have growth mindsets, people who look at challenges as opportunities. People who know that it's not about what you post on Facebook and Twitter or how clever you think you are or how much attention you seek to grasp for yourself. It's not about being the prettiest or the smartest in the room or even the most courageous one or the one who can tweet or post the best or most. It's really about the power within. Growth mindsetters don't look around the room or around social media or around the community at their friends and family. They find opportunities for success within the challenges and thrive on the challenges themselves. They don't see rejection as failure. They find opportunity within failure. I can tell you as a rabbi, on more than one occasion have I experienced rejection. Rejection from congregants, rejection to things I've said and done, explicit or implicit. And every time that I have tried to turn that into an opportunity for learning or engaging or conversation or speaking or even making a situation a little bit uncomfortable, there is growth and nuance and newness. As it is said, you're either green and growing or ripe and rotting. And what that means is to move forward, we have to seek a growth mindset. It will help us and it will help the world. On this Rosh Hashanah, my hope is that we can start with a growth mindset predicated on these questions instead of the others. See, we spend so much time during the High Holy Days beating ourselves up, physically hitting ourselves on Yom Kippur, saying that we're sinners and we're sinful, and I think that may be part of the reason why you only come 4 days a year. Because it's such a Debbie Downer kind of service. I know everyone's thinking, wah, wah. We're beating ourselves and we're awful and we're terrible. I want us to do something else. See, I don't think that leads to a growth mindset. I want us to try something different. Think to yourselves as you begin the High Holy Days, what am I good at? What about myself do I actually not need to change? What do I really, really like that I do? A skill, a hobby, perhaps a talent that I have, something I'm good at. What about myself do I not want to change, and what do I want people to say about me when I am no longer here? What do I want my kids and my grandkids to say about me? These are the important questions that I think we need to begin to ask in framing a growth mindset for these days of awe. I think if we start from a place like Caleb and Yehoshua, like Caleb and Joshua, saying we have within ourselves the capacity to grow and to change and to move forward. We got this. And not see ourselves as grasshoppers and beat ourselves up constantly and think that we can't be the change and make the change. If we can start from the place of what we like most, feel most proud of within ourselves, from what we know to be our greatest strengths and talents and skills, then teshuva, the process of changing back and returning to our core essences, which are those things, teshuva, real teshuva, is possible. But you gotta be willing to be scared and be okay with it and live with that fear and not be ruled by it. For years, we may think that it's all about changing from something bad, being sinful and wrong, and then on the 11th or 12th day of Tishrei, I realize we're right back where we started. Changing back to our core essence is possible. We don't have to see it as changing from something bad to something good when Yom Kippur is over, because that's going to go right back. It's about feeling alive and capable and knowing what is possible. It's about going back to the ideas and ideals we know are at our core and most fundamental places of goodness, courageousness, and confidence. We all do this to ourselves. We beat ourselves up. But God wants us to be our essences, to be good, to know we are good, and to know that we are capable. Let us spend these days not tearing ourselves down within the pity of sin, but begin again to renew or reboot, for those of you who like the modern lingo, and reimagine ourselves from the places where we once grew into the people that we are today. And when we do this, when we change ourselves from within the best parts of ourselves, the world will change around us. Our world will change around us. And that's what God wants, for us to partner with God in the ongoing perfection and creation of the world, not to keep tearing it down and saying who's to blame for it, but to lift ourselves and those around us up with a growth mindset, to be like Caleb and Joshua and say, we got this. On this Rosh Hashanah, let us grow from strength to strength in the coming years, and remember, we are not the first and will not be the last to live in a world that is scary and crazy and meshugana and upside down. Let us have that growth mindset of Caleb and Yehoshua, of Caleb and Joshua, and together enter the promised land, a place and a space of love and of goodness and of God's essence and of peace. Shana Tova.